Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for being here as always, and today let's talk about Thrawn Alliances in a spoiler-free review. I apologize that there's not going to be any face cam. We're not doing a talking head video, just a static pictures video to kind of point us in the direction of whatever we're talking about at the time. Mainly just because, well, it's actually 5:30 in the morning on Wednesday, the 25th, the day after the book came out, and I just got home from work. And I just got out of the shower, and whenever I shower right after work, because I work in a warehouse with a bunch of cardboard dust and all that kind of crap, my eyes are usually super bloodshot for whatever reason, and my perpetually tired looking face is extra perpetually tired looking. So yeah. Anyways, let's talk about Thrawn Alliances. So Thrawn Alliances actually takes place over two separate time areas. It's actually almost two completely separate books smashed together. It actually is somewhat reminiscent of Jose Daniel Older's Last Shot book, the Han Solo book that came out in conjunction with Solo, a Star Wars story. And in Last Shot, we had 3 different time areas with an extra kind of fourth one shoved in too, and we were jumping all over the place. This book kind of does that. Thrawn Alliances kind of does that, but it's much cleaner and you spend a lot of time. I didn't count the number of shifts in timeline perspective and the shifts in between the different stories, but I'd probably say we only have about 4, 5, maybe 6 times where we switch from Clone Wars era. This is just after Ahsoka leaves the Jedi Academy, just after the end of season 5, maybe during season 6 kind of timeline, right near the end of the Clone Wars. And then we have our time period, which takes place in between season 3 and season 4 of Star Wars Rebels. So about 18 ABY-ish, as far as I can guess. So first off, let's talk about the Clone Wars era storyline. It was very enjoyable. It might just be because I've got some super hardcore Padme hype going on right now, what with the announcement of Queen's Shadow that we're getting next year. I believe March it is. But there's really 3 main characters in that story. You've got Anakin, Mithron Nura Odo, Commander Mithron Nura Odo of the Chiss Ascendancy, and Padme Amidala, and Anakin Skywalker. I might have listed one of those characters twice. But anyways, the point still stands. It's basically a Clone Wars arc. It's really a 4, 5, maybe even 6 episode arc of the Clone Wars, but it is paced for adults. It's a story that's paced for adults. You know, Clone Wars is very popular and very well known to be very snappy, right? It's paced for 12-year-olds. That's the design of the Clone Wars. Whereas this felt like they might have taken like a story treatment for season 8 of the Clone Wars or something like that, and they decided to kind of hand that to Timothy Zahn, and then he turned it into a much slower paced, much more there's even almost a sort of thriller vibe to this whole Clone Wars timeline. And of the two, I would even say, of the 2 different timeline era things, I would even say that I probably consistently enjoyed the Clone Wars one over the Rebels era. With that being said, the Rebels era story, the story of actually Vader and Thrawn, had better moments, if that makes sense. So the Clone Wars one, for me at least, was more consistently enjoyable. It was a solid 7 out of 10 all the way through, whereas the latter Rebels era storyline was sometimes a 5 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10, but then it went up to a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 even in a couple of spots. The main reason for that is I feel like Timothy Zahn he kind of inserted this weird subplotty thing during the Rebels era timeline where there's like this weird kind of relationship in between Vader's, right hand people and Thrawn's right hand people. And I feel like that got put in there because there's no third main character during that Rebels era storyline. And we did have 3 main characters in the Clone Wars era storyline. So I feel like that was just kind of shoved in there. And at least to me, I wasn't very involved. Don't get me wrong. You guys have been following this channel at all. You guys know that I love my normal people stories. I loved like Battlefront Twilight Company. However, when you put in 2 titanic characters like Thrawn and Vader, I kind of just want to concentrate on Thrawn and Vader. Whereas Padme during the Clone Wars era story, she is a titanic character in and of her own right. Whereas, Thrawn's bodyguard, Rook, I don't think that's a spoiler to say, and some stormtrooper captain guy, being at odds with one another, and then having begrudging respect or whatever, and then maybe not, and then that doesn't have the same kind of weight as a storyline involving Padme frickin' Nabiri Amidala. You know what I mean? And that's the only real negative that I can think of about this book. Overall, this book was fan-frickin-tastic. The Rebels era storyline has some of the juiciest bits of canon in it that I have ever heard. We got a ton of explanation about how the unknown regions work. We got a ton of explanation about how the Chiss Ascendancy works. And that makes me really happy. Even if I wasn't too big of a fan of Thrawn and Legends, I love Thrawn in the new canon. This book reinforces that idea. But I've always been a fan, even during the Legends era, of the Chiss Ascendancy. The idea of this, reclusive government that's incredibly powerful in a military sense. And, all of this kind of stuff. I've always loved that concept of a government and of a civilization that is completely unknown to the rest of the galaxy and all that kind of stuff. That's always been really interesting, and getting some explanation about how that Chiss Ascendancy works inside of this new canon was really, really rewarding to get that new knowledge. I would say that probably my favorite characters in this was older Thrawn and Vader, even though that I may have enjoyed the Clone Wars story a little bit more just because it was more consistently engaging for me. Oh boy, once you guys read this book, and if you've already read this, you know what I'm talking about, that epilogue bit in between Thrawn and Vader, oh boy, this is a required reading kind of thing. Like, I understand if you might want to skip New Dawn if you're not super into Rebels, or you might want to skip even like Lost Stars, which you shouldn't because it's an amazing book in and of itself, but it's not necessary. This book is necessary. If you want to understand the character of Vader in a whole new light, if you want to understand the motivations for Thrawn and even get maybe some hints as to what his motivations are, because even after the first Thrawn novel, the first canon Thrawn novel, I should say, there wasn't really a explanation what Thrawn's motivations were. Where does his allegiance lie? Is it with the Chiss Ascendancy? Is it with the Empire? And I would even say that at the end of this book, again, I don't feel that this is necessarily a spoiler, but you might want to skip ahead a couple seconds here in the video. Skip ahead about 30 seconds. I would say that even at the end of this book, you're not quite sure, but you're much more intrigued by it. You're much more engaged, and I'm still sitting here going, what is Thrawn? Who is Thrawn? Where is Thrawn? How is Thrawn? Or whatever. I actually haven't seen Infinity War. I don't know how to make that joke. Anyways, we'll go ahead and end this review here. I'm not going to do a spoiler review video for this book. I want to kind of change up the format on how we review books here on this channel. and maybe even comics if I decide to start reviewing those things too, those pieces of content as well. Instead, I'm just going to make a spoiler-free video like this one, and then we're going to use the comment section of this spoiler-free video as a forum for spoiler discussion. So do not scroll down into those comments for sake of spoilers if you have not read this book. But if you've read this book and you have questions, if you have something to bring up, I'll be leaving a posted comment or a pinned comment down here or down there, and then we can have the discussion down there about all the spoilerific bits of new nuggets of canon and all that wonderful stuff. All right, guys, I'm going to get this video edited together. Thank you guys as always. And as always, may the Force be with you guys. Take care.